In this video, we're going to tell the tragic story of how a beloved island landmark became the scene of a horrific disaster in a matter of seconds. On the idyllic shores of Middle Bass Island, nestled in the western basin of Lake Erie, the Lonz Winery's Gothic-style stone castle stood as a familiar beacon to boaters and tourists. For generations, it promised conviviality and the simple pleasure of a glass of island wine. But on a sun-drenched Saturday, July 1st, 2000, this symbol of summer leisure became the site of a terrifying tragedy. In an instant, a crowded concrete terrace collapsed, plunging scores of unsuspecting patrons into a dark cellar below. The event would claim one life, injure dozens, and bring a sudden, somber end to a long and storied chapter in the island's history. The story of the winery site begins long before the collapse, rooted in the unique heritage of the Lake Erie Islands, a region nicknamed the Wine Islands. The surrounding lake created a special microclimate ideal for cultivating grapes, a practice that took hold in the mid-19th century. In 1866, a man named Andrew Werle established the Golden Eagle Wine Cellars, a winery that would grow to become one of the largest in the entire country. 18 years later, in 1884, a German immigrant named Peter Lonz founded his own smaller winery on the island. The future of the site, however, would be shaped by his son, George Lonz. In 1926, he merged his family's business with the remnants of the Golden Eagle Winery, which had been ravaged by fire 3 years prior. When another fire struck in 1942, he constructed the famous Gothic-style stone castle that would become the landmark so many would come to recognize. The winery flourished, becoming the biggest public attraction on the island. George Lonz ran the winery until his death in 1969. A decade later, in 1979, the winery was purchased by Paramount Distillers through its subsidiary, Myers Wine Cellars. By the late 20th century, the winery had transitioned from a center of viticulture to more of a party destination, capitalizing on the festive atmosphere of the Lake Erie Islands. The day of the collapse, July 1st, 2000, was a typical busy summer Saturday on Middle Bass Island. The holiday weekend brought a throng of visitors to the winery, eager to enjoy the sunshine, music, and wine. The concrete terrace, a 25 by 20 foot extension from the main building, was crowded with an estimated 80 to 100 people. They sat at picnic tables, listening to a piano player, completely unaware of the structural peril that lay just beneath their feet. The terrace had been constructed in 1964, cantilevered from the main building over an unused cellar. At approximately 3:45 p.m., a cracking sound was heard, followed by a rumble that some people mistook for thunder. One witness, 23-year-old Wade Weaver, who was on the terrace, recalled, "I heard a crack, and I just dropped." Without any further warning, the 4-inch thick concrete floor gave way. In an instant, dozens of people, along with heavy picnic tables and soda machines, plunged approximately 20 feet into the dark, unoccupied wine cellar below. The collapse left a gaping hole in the side of the historic building, transforming a scene of summer leisure into one of chaos and disbelief. Survivors and uninjured bystanders rushed to the scene. Their festive afternoon turned into a desperate rescue mission. In an act of quick thinking, doors were torn from their hinges to be used as makeshift backboards for the injured. Among the first to respond were off-duty doctors, nurses, and police officers who happened to be on the island. One nurse, Linda McGrain, had been moments away from walking onto the terrace herself when she stopped to talk to friends. Hearing the screams, she ran to a scene she later described as looking into a bad movie. The remote location of Middle Bass Island presented significant challenges. Initial 911 calls from cell phones struggled to convey the sheer magnitude of the disaster. Emergency personnel were summoned from as far away as Cleveland, 60 miles distant. The U.S. Coast Guard dispatched a 47-foot motor lifeboat, and a fleet of helicopters was mobilized to airlift the most critically injured to mainland hospitals. In total, more than 40 people were flown off the island, while others were transported by boat. The rescue operation was a massive and complex undertaking. In the final tally, one person, 29-year-old Mark Reihart of Columbus, was killed in the collapse. The number of injured was reported to be 75, with many suffering from broken bones, lacerations, and other serious trauma. The investigation into the cause began almost immediately. Engineers who inspected the site that night quickly suspected a structural failure rather than overloading from the crowd. Ottawa County Sheriff's investigators initially pointed to a faulty steel beam as a likely cause. Ultimately, engineers determined the collapse was caused by a structural problem, but a definitive public ruling was not made, as the matter was destined for civil litigation rather than criminal prosecution. The legal fallout from the tragedy was extensive. In the years that followed, approximately 93 lawsuits were filed against Paramount Distillers and its subsidiary, Manti Mon Ami Lonz Wineries. The lawsuits, filed by survivors and their families, sought damages for physical injuries, emotional distress, and lost wages. The family of Mark Reichard settled their lawsuit in November 2001 for what their attorney called a very substantial amount of money. One of the few cases to go to court resulted in a $550,000 award to a Pennsylvania woman named Ruth Oleska, who suffered a fractured foot in the collapse and subsequently lost her job. The last of the 93 lawsuits were settled over the ensuing years. The deck collapse marked the end of the Lonz Winery as a commercial enterprise. The iconic castle, once a symbol of celebration, stood as a silent monument to the tragedy. In 2001, the state of Ohio purchased 124 acres of land on Middle Bass Island, including the winery complex and its marina, with the plan of creating a new state park. The acquisition ensured the preservation of the historic site and its surrounding natural areas. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, undertook a multi-million-dollar project to stabilize and repurpose the winery buildings. While much of the upper levels of the main building could not be salvaged, the iconic facade and tower were restored. The area where the collapsed deck once stood, along with the footprint of the demolished upper floors, was transformed into an open-air plaza. The historic wine cellars, some dating back to the 1860s, were preserved and opened to the public for the first time, featuring exhibits on the history of winemaking on the island. The restored site was officially unveiled to the public on June 23, 2017. The collapse of the Lonz Winery deck was a profound tragedy, a stark reminder of the potential for disaster even in the most idyllic of settings. Through the efforts of the state of Ohio, the legacy of the Lonz Winery has been preserved, not as a place of commerce, but as a public space for remembrance, recreation, and the appreciation of the unique history of the Lake Erie Wine Islands. The restored facade of the old stone castle still stands, a silent sentinel over the waters of Lake Erie, its story now one of both triumph and tragedy, a poignant reminder of a summer afternoon that will never be forgotten. That's it for this week's Leisure Lore, and please do us a favor and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed it. It means the world to us.